Welcome to the AI Workspace walkthrough video. I'm going to step you through setting up an AI workspace for your team, educational institution, or enterprise from scratch. AI workspaces are secure, private, and can have a number of additional features, including model and skill management, roles and permissions, team sharing, logs, custom domains, custom themes, and branding. Enterprise workspaces can be single tenant, and inference can also be localized by data center region. If you have any questions specifically about your requirements or getting an enterprise workspace set up, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to guide you in the right direction. So instead of just talking about it, let's get into it and set up our workspace. So I'm going to call this Big Co because that is our fictitious company. Now I'm checking out using the business workspace option, which is completely self serve. So I can select how many seats I need in my workspace and check out myself. If you want to set up an enterprise workspace that's single tenant, you'll need to reach out to us because you can't actually set these up yourself. We do need to provision it for you. So let's go ahead and select the 5-seat option. Now there's two billing options, credit card or invoice. So if you'd like to be invoiced, you can select invoice, fill in your details, including tax ID, purchase order if you have one, and that will go ahead and send you an invoice. You can still set up your workspace before the invoice is being paid, but you won't actually be able to invite members and run inference against models until you pay. So we'll stick with credit card and we're going to go ahead, accept the terms and conditions and privacy policy and confirm and pay. Okay, so once you've completed the payment steps, you'll end up in the setup workspace configuration screen. Now, to get back here at any time, you can click on the icon in the bottom left-hand corner and select manage, and that will load your workspace administration menu. Now, there's a number of steps that are recommended to get your account set up, including inviting team members, adding your brand and favicon, creating and assigning teams, and so on and so forth. On each of these, you can click. There's a video that'll step you through setting up that feature, some instructions below, and then you can click Got it, let's go, and you can go and complete that step. There's also a tab for tutorial videos, and we're adding more of these all the time. And these step you through specific scenarios and configuration for your own workspace. So I like to actually start down here in settings myself. And this is where I can change the name of the workspace, modify the logo, favicon, set the default AI model, default workspace assistant, default theme, my custom domain, and then enable some more customization features like overriding the support system that's built in. So first of all, I'm going to upload a logo just to start setting this up and make it look like a Big Co branded workspace. I'm also going to add my favicon here, and you'll notice the logos start appearing in, so it's starting to look a lot better. You can also select your default model. We'll come back to that in a moment because I want to show you actually modifying the models themselves and selecting which models are available in the workspace. And you can also set the default workspace assistant. Now, remember, when I create a new session here, by default in my workspace, I'm going to get the Simtheory assistant out of the box. But let's say I want to have my own assistant for Big Co where I customize that assistant to work well and understand my own business. So I'm going to click into assistants, I'm going to click create, and we're going to select an avatar. And I have an assistant image that I prepared earlier that I'll drag in here. And we're going to call this Big Co Assist. Now, I'm not going to do a great job of prompting here. There'll be a specific video on this if you want to watch it. But I'm just going to say you are Big Co's workspace assistant, help the user. Now, in this instructions or prompt, you can put in here information about Big Co in this case, or some of the things that the workspace can help the user with. So you can put a lot of information in here about typical questions that new users might ask the default assistant. So let's go ahead and create this assistant, and you'll see that it appears in here. Now, I want to make this the default assistant for the workspace. So I can click the ellipsis menu here. I'm going to go ahead and select share. And then what I need to do is come under here to general access and select workspace. And that will make this assistant available to my entire workspace, which means I can set it as the default. So let's go back into Manage, Settings, and then I'm going to change the default assistant to Big Co Assist. Okay, so now when I go and create a new session, you'll see that my default assistant is now Big Co Assist, and there won't be any other options available. Once you change the default assistant, we actually remove and hide the Simtheory default assistant. So now the workspace is completely branded. So let's go back into Manage, and you can see as we've been going, we've set up the brand and favicon, we've created the default assistant. Before we invite team members, we might want to do a few more things. So, one of those things is to set up teams. And teams are really useful for sharing both assistants and also sessions. Think of it as like grouping a series of users together so you can share content with them a lot easier. So, a good example of that is creating a marketing team. And I'll put myself here on the marketing team, and you might have a finance team in here as well. And then you also might have like a data analyst team here. And I won't put team there because it's not that interesting, and I'll create it. So I've got data analyst, finance, and marketing. Now let's go back into assistants and see why this is helpful. So if we come in here and click share, we can now share with teams. So if we wanted to share an assistant that's really useful to our finance team, we can select finance in here, decide if we want them to be able to duplicate the assistant and copy in all the files with full access, or just use the assistant here with read only. You can put in an optional message here and click share, or just share and then copy the link item. And so this is just an easy way of sharing this assistant internally with Teams. So that's what Teams are predominantly used for. We're going to add some more features to Teams over time, but it's a really useful feature now for just group sharing really easily. So now let's look at roles. Roles are basically the permission system, and there's two roles built into your workspace. There's the admin role and the member role. Now, if you're the owner of the workspace, like I am in this case, by default, you're the admin and also the owner. So you can't have your role changed by anyone else because you're in complete control and you by default have all the permissions. So if you try and edit the admin role here, you'll see that you can't because we need that default admin sort of super user role in the system. Now, anyone that's added to the workspace will automatically be added as a member, and members, they have permissions that you can edit, but you can't remove the member role. So you can change the default permissions that someone gets when they sign up, but you can't remove it because we need that role when a new member signs up to your organization. So you can see in here, there's a number of different role permissions that are set, and you can basically enable or disable any feature in the app itself. One that's disabled by default, which is an interesting one to think about, is allowing them to switch themes. So by default, they'll be on the default theme of the workspace and they can't actually change their theme. But if you want to allow them to change their theme, you can select this option and that'll allow users to switch between themes. So they'll start out with the default that you select, but they can still switch between any themes that you've got in your account. We'll come back to that theming system in a minute. But you can also create custom roles as well. So we could call this model trial, and we'll say people who can try new models first. And so this role, we might have a special role where we have admin permissions, maybe like a ton of permissions here that we give people just to show you how this works. And then we can also restrict skills rather for this role. So say we wanted people to only be able to use certain skills, we can go ahead and select what those skills will be if they're available in the system, of course. And this role will be restricted to just those skills. We can also do that for models as well. So if we just wanted to allow them to use, say, O1 and maybe O3, and we'll say Sonnet, we can restrict the models and skills that this particular role can use. Now, if you're in an enterprise workspace, you can also restrict the amount of input and output tokens that a particular role can use each month of your total quota. So that's a really handy feature as well, but again, not really shown here. So I'll create that new role. And then to add people to the role, you go back in, sorry, to members, select the member, and then you'll see an option to add the member to a role. So we'll come back to that as well once we add some members here. So let's look at theming now. So by default, you'll get all the themes out of the box that are available in Simtheory by default. Now, some of them may not be appropriate for your organization. And so that's why by default, new members can't switch themes. They just get the modern day theme. But say there was themes like anime and night storm that you just didn't really think were appropriate for your brand, or you don't really want them in your workspace. So you can come in here and click the ellipses and select disable, and this will just disable those themes. So we'll pick a bunch of themes here and we'll disable them. And then you can use the filters for enabled or disabled, so enabled or disabled, to see which themes are enabled and which themes are disabled. Now, keep in mind, of those enabled themes, they're the ones you can select as your default theme, or if you've enabled the ability to switch themes, people will be able to switch between any themes that are enabled. But if you don't have theme switching enabled for the role, they won't be able to access any of these themes, even though they're enabled. Now, what's great about the theme system is you can create and customize your own theme. So I'm going to call this theme that I'm going to make Big Co Corporate, and we're going to use this as our default theme here. So we're going to do a dark theme to start off with. So we might in brackets put dark just to make it easier to distinguish between the themes. And of course, we're going to use our yellow primary color here. Now, you can, of course, put in precise hexadecimal colors in here to get the colors appropriate to your brand. But just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to randomly pick a yellow. I'm also going to pick this Merriweather font. There's a number of fonts built in, and they're previewed here on the right. So first, we'll create the theme, and then I'll show you how you can do some advanced editing on the theme and basically edit any color or style in the system. Okay, so our theme's been created successfully, and we now have Big Co Corporate Dark in here. So I'll switch to the theme in a minute and we'll take a look, but on the ellipsis menu now, you can actually edit this theme and you'll see a new tab appears, Simple or Advanced. So what we do is we use AI to generate all the theme colors by default for you, because there's quite an extensive amount of theme colors in the system. And then you can tweak and refine it from there. So I can tab over to Advanced here, click into background and text, and you can see all the colors that's selected throughout the system for different buttons and tabs and form fields and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to go in and edit them in this video, but you can see just a level of customization in the theme that is available. So let's look at what it came up with. So in our theme switcher, we're going to select Big Corporate Co Dark, and the system will now switch to that theme. And you can see it looks pretty good. It's probably a little bit too dark for my liking, but you could go in and tweak it and change the background color, and you'll see these themes are held up throughout the system. So you can work around and play around with themes and try and get them on brand. We can also help you set them up if you're an enterprise user and pre-install them in your account for you. So I think we've got a fair amount of things set up, and so I'm pretty happy now to invite some members to this workspace. So to do that, I can click Add Members up here, and I can individually enter the email addresses of the people that I would like to invite, or I can select the bulk add option. And this allows you to separate a list of emails and easily send a huge amount of invites at the same time. But just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to send a really simple invite to myself, and then I'll show you what the invite process looks like from the other side, not being the admin, but being the user instead. Okay, so I've been into my email, I've found the invite, and you'll see that the link in the invite takes me to this screen. Now, on mine, you'll see it says Simtheory Dev. It's not going to say that in the production version that you'll be using, so don't worry about that. But you can see it does have the brand up here of Big Co. There's no reference to Simtheory or anything like that. It's just Big Co's account that we're joining here. So all they need to do is go ahead and put a password in and fill in this code here, and then they're in. One thing while I'm doing this, I'll tell you about is we can create a connection to an existing authentication. So if you're using something like SAML or just SSO internally, you can connect it up or connect it up to your Microsoft or Google Workspace accounts as well, just to make login a lot easier rather than having individual logins to the workspace itself. So I just need to go ahead and authorize the app as the next step here. And you'll see I load in and we're in the account. Now, we didn't change the default theme, you'll recall, so it's still on this modern day theme. And in the menu, remember, we didn't allow them to change themes, so the menu in here is very different. They can't actually change themes. You'll see that the default assistant here is Big Code Assist, and then the model switches up here with all the different models that are available in the account as well. So that's what it looks like when you invite someone to the account. Now let's go back and look at it from the admin view. Okay, so you can see that I'm now back in the members section and I have a member role here with the invited user now active in the account. So you can then see the different options here and assign teams. So we'll say manage teams, we'll put this person on the marketing team, and you can also change their role in here as well. So if we wanted to put them on that model trial, we could put them on that role as well. And likewise, it's just easy to change them back again or make them an administrator just by switching around their roles. Now, you can revoke their access as well. So, should someone leave the company or they no longer need an account and you want to free up that seat, you can come in here and select revoke access, confirm. You'll see them disappear and they'll end up in revoked here. And at any point, you can go ahead and reactivate them as well from in the menu. Okay, so now let's look at models, and I've switched back to the standard theme just to make it easier to keep track of where we're at. So I'm going into models here, and this shows you a list of all the models that are available in the system. Now, as we add new models into Simtheory, these will be added to your workspace account, but they're going to be added in the disabled state. So they'll appear in disabled or in the main all under models here, and you'll note that they will be disabled when we add new models because you have to enable them and decide to enable them in your workspace. That's the same for skills, which I'll show you in a minute too. So you decide how and when to provision new skills or models. And you can use those roles to restrict skills and models to particular roles so that you have time to trial new models or skills and make sure they're implemented into your organization correctly. So, just like we saw with themes, you can enable and disable models. So, for example, say you weren't interested in having the Amazon models in your instance because you just wanted to have the sort of main, most popular models to not confuse your users. You can come in here and say disable, disable, and these models will end up being disabled in the workspace. They'll appear under disabled, and you'll no longer be able to select them from the model picker. And keep in mind, disabling them in here means that you disable them from everyone in the entire workspace, including yourself. So if you want to enable or disable certain models for certain roles, that's probably a better way of handling this. But if you've got a small team and you just want to enable and disable models for everyone in the account, this is a perfectly good way to do it. So you can go through enable and disable them. The other option is, say you really like the new Claude 3.7 Sonnet model, but you really want to tune it. You can now do that. So you can come in here and you can fork a model. You can give it a custom model logo if you wish. If you don't, it'll just use the default. You give it a custom model name, model description. You can control the system prompt, the temperature, top P, and then a huge amount of advanced settings in here as well, that some of you will be familiar with, some of you will not be. And this is really just for advanced users that want to control every aspect of the model. So you can fork a model, make it available. And what's really cool about this is you can just have one model in the account called, say, Big Co AI, and that model is branded with your brand, but under the hood, it might be running, say, Claude 3.5 or GPT 4.0, and it has your specific tune on it just to keep it really simple. Once you've built those models as well, you can restrict them to certain roles. So for standard members, they might just have access to the Big Co default model, but then other more advanced users might have access to a large array of models. So let's look at skills next. With skills, you can enable or disable certain skills from your account. So you'll see all of the skills that are available in here. And just like we saw with the models, you can enable them and disable them. But there is one other option in here, and that's feature. So we can click into featured, and these featured skills are the skills that appear here. So create an image, create with code, read the web, search the web, and so on. So you can customize these as well. So if we go back in here to skills, into featured, say we don't want to feature, say create with code in here, we can go ahead and remove that from featured. And you'll see we've got Flux 1.1 as the image skill featured. The system's smart enough to realize that it will just replace that. So it'll say create an image instead, because it would be confusing if it said create a Flux 1.1 image. So let me show you how to change that as well. So we can come in here. All we need to do is remove the featured image skill. And then in all of our skills, let's say we really liked ideogram 2A, we'll go ahead and feature that one instead. So you can now see ideogram 2 is featured in here. If we go and create a new session, you do need to refresh for the changes to take effect. But if you go ahead and refresh, you'll see this is now creating an ideogram image by default. And you can see the create with code options gone as well. So those featured skills are fully customizable, which is really, really helpful. So let's go back to settings. We'll go ahead in here just to show you how this works and change the default model as well to Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And then with our theme, we might want to change our default theme to Big Co Corporate. Of course, for that change to take effect, we would need to refresh now. But let's look at some of these other settings while we're in here. So we have the ability to change the workspace domain. So by default, the workspace domain is going to be this subdomain and .simtheory.ai. And you can go ahead in here and edit that subdomain. So we could call this a really big co if we wanted to change it. Now, it does have this warning here: changing the URL will affect all existing bookmarks and links to your workspace. And that's because if you've already linked out or people internally have shared this stuff and you go ahead and change the slug, all of those links will stop working, which will be really frustrating. So I recommend fiddling around with the domain when you're first starting out because you don't really want to change it later. Now, the next step is you can set up a custom domain as well. So say you wanted chat.bigco.com, or maybe you wanted workspace.bigco.com. You can put in the URL in here that you want. It can be a subdomain, it can be a primary domain, whatever you want. And then you go next, and it'll give you DNS configuration settings that you'll need to get someone to enter. And if you're not that technical, you can give these details to someone who understands how to put them in. And then you need to verify the domain. Once you've verified it, there's one more step, which is to click a button, which is to request to enable that domain. And then we enable it on our end, and you'll be able to use that workspace domain. The cool thing about this is you no longer have the simtheoryai.com reference anywhere. So it's completely your domain, completely your workspace. For all anyone knows, you built and are hosting this AI workspace internally at your company, and the end users don't even really need to know. Now, if you change your mind and don't want a custom domain, you can also remove it here, and it'll just revert back to that original workspace domain. There's another really advanced option in here as well. So if I come into the menu here and I'm in the workspace and I click support, you'll see that it says support is managed by Simtheory on behalf of BigCo. So if your users submit a ticket or read the documentation in here, that all comes from Simtheory. But there's some cases where people don't want that. They might be white labeling the solution, or you might just want to have your own internal docs of how to use the system and to triage the tickets yourself as they come in. So you can click edit configuration here, and there's a few options. The first is to put in your own support email address and documentation URL. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll put in my email, and I'll put in just google.com as an example for now. Okay, so the next step is I now need to go ahead and enable the custom workspace support. So for this configuration to be essentially on, I need to switch this on. Now, if I refresh the page, I'll show you what this looks like from the user end. So I click down here on the left, I click support, and now it says support is managed by BigCo. And what this now means is that documentation link, in my case, will just go to Google. But when I submit a ticket through the ticketing system, that'll actually be forwarded and sent to this email address in here, as opposed to the Simtheory support. So you can completely bypass our support system as well if you wish. Now, there's another option as well, which is to just disable support entirely. So you can switch this on and save it out. And then when you refresh, you'll no longer have, no users in the system will have or see the support option in here at all. There's a few use cases of why you would want to do that, but for most people, I would recommend not having it off because you want your users to be able to reach out for help either directly to Simtheory or to an email address that you specify, like a workspace administrator. Now, the last option here for support is a little bit different. This support is for you, the workspace admin. So if you need support or help in your workspace and you've got custom support enabled, you still need a way to reach us. So you can do that from here through this support portal, including submitting tickets, finding information about coverage areas in your region, and also the tutorial videos are in here as well. So let's go back to getting started. So once you finish all of these steps, you have the option to turn the getting started menu off. So I've switched it off in here, and then it will disappear from the menu. And that's why we have these videos in here for you to watch as well. So let's look at a few more things. We have logs here, and these logs show what's been happening in the system. So if you have multiple administrators or users take important actions in the workspace, we track all of those actions throughout the system so you can see exactly what's going on and who did what. You can also filter by specific users, different categories of the audit that you might want to look at. You also can segment by date range as well. By default, it's everything. There's no sort of time filter on it. You can click export and you'll get a CSV download of all of those logs as well. So you've got full logs in here. You also have analytics. These analytics obviously are completely empty because no one's ever used this workspace, but you can see everything like messages, the most popular models and skills in the analytics, and they really come alive once people start using your workspace. So the final thing I'll show you is the billing. And this is where you can cancel your workspace plan. You can change the billing information, the billing email contact, all the things you would expect through the billing portal. To get to it, you just click Manage Billing up here. Below that, you can see how many seats are currently being used, of how many seats are available. You have shortcuts here to manage the members or manage the seats as well. So if you wanted to upgrade here, you can add another seat. It'll show you the prorated amount, and you can check out through here as well. Below that is invoices. So this is just a way to easily download invoices. If you have an outstanding invoice and you need to pay it and you're trying to find it, that's where it's going to be in here, but we'll also email it to you as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of AI Workspaces in Simtheory. We're adding features all the time and making improvements based on your feedback. So if you have any feedback, please do reach out. Also, if you have any questions about security, privacy, single tenant instances, or any of the enterprise features that you might have seen advertised or me talk about today that we didn't show in this walkthrough video, please do reach out to us and we can walk you through some of those setups as well. Keep in mind our AI workspaces scale up to tens of thousands of users. They're designed to work at scale, and they're also designed to work with small teams or families of up to 5 or 6 people. Sign up to an AI workspace, there's a number of other tutorial videos that you can watch. And if you head over to our YouTube channel as well and look up Simtheory, you'll see a number of other workspace videos that you can watch that take you through all the features I've showed in more detail in specific videos. I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough, and I'll see you in the next one.